So I was going to start this Battletech vlog by saying this is one of my favorite mechs in the game. I really love playing it. It fits the narrative. It's got some of my favorite weapon systems. And then I realized that essentially I say that almost with every mech in the game. That's why collecting mechs is just a zero-sum game. You're eventually going to collect them all. There's so many great mechs to play and not enough time to play Battletech. But let's look at the Ostwar. This is one of the class of Ost mechs produced by Kong Industries. If we dig into the narrative there, we've got the Ostwar, the Ostman, the Ost Scout, essentially the Walker battle pod type mech. So visually on the table, it has a very, very unique and distinct appearance. Similar to the Stalker in terms of looks, but certainly doesn't have the bite of the Stalker. And of course, the Ostwar being a heavy mech and the Stalker being an assault mech, it has a lot more weapons, a lot more tonnage, but that's an example of another pod type mech. Armor, pretty good. Speed could be a little bit faster. I think in the parameters of a heavy mech for the tonnage, it's about right. 1,200 battle value. That seems a little light for a heavy mech, given what it has. And when we look at the weapons systems on it, we can see why. It's a little bit underpowered, in my opinion. Well, let me backtrack for a second. Not so much underpowered, but it's focused on one very, very specific thing. And there's not a lot of multi-point weapon systems on there. I guess a great example would be something like the Warhammer, where you've got the two PPCs for range. Then you're moving into the lasers and the small lasers and the machine guns and the short-range missiles on there. That battle value, it has a lot of weapons on there, the Warhammer. Side question, can you afford to fire all of those weapons and utilize it and manage heat? So certainly heavier mechs that have less weapons, you should be able to fire them more. So we start with a long-range missile 20-pack. I would expect a 20-pack at a heavyweight class on there. I know there's a few, like the Grasshopper and some other mechs that might have a 5 or a 10. The role is very different. It's there to give you something to do on the way in before switching to other weapon systems. But the 20 on the Ostwar is good. Is good for a heavy mech that is not a missile boat on there. Now, naturally, one of the things that we look for, or I look for, is redundancy. There's a lot of what-ifs in Battletech. First, you got to get into position tactically on the hex map of the table. Then you've got to be in range. Then you've got to actually hit, and your opponent's going to do their best to make sure that it doesn't get hit. Then hopefully you damage a good area on there. So there's a lot of what-ifs to make it happen. And to go from being in range to actually scoring a hit, the more weapons you have at each range bracket, even if they're not the same, if they've been paired to the same bracket, like an autocannon 10 and a PPC, I'm thinking about the Mackie on there. Would the Mackie count as a Walker pod? I don't think so. The design is kind of pod-like, even if it's stretched out like a cylinder, but that's kind of a prototype mech on there. But having two of the same weapon systems, even if they're in range, gives you redundancy. The Ostwar, just with that one LRM-20, it doesn't have it. That's not a bad thing, but it doesn't have it. If it did, then we'd be looking at something like the Archer or perhaps a longbow on there. But the 20-pack means if I roll average on the spread, it's got some bite. I'm going to do some damage. If I roll legendary, I'm going to soak you really, really well. It makes it kind of tempting to shoot at faster targets, lighter targets on there, like mechs or medium mechs to wound them. But on the way in, I've got something to do with that LRM-20. It's got bite. If I'm engaging one-to-one, then I'm going to try and take my time closing with you, because I'm going to try and hit you 2 or 3 turns with the LRM-20 to start opening up armor and start, getting you to scratch off a couple of those armor bubbles on there. I could do some indirect fire on the way in, but I wouldn't say that that's the focus of it, because with the second brace of weapons, the short-range missiles and the medium lasers, we don't want to hang back. I don't want to hang back and all that battle value is just shooting one LRM-20. I want to be moving in, leveraging my armor, and leveraging the other stuff. But the 20's got the stuff on the way in. Then as we close, now we have a choice. And the range bracket jumping from the medium lasers to the short-range missiles is pretty quick. We're going to then switch over to those medium lasers. And we're going to continue to try and open things up, try to get to some internals, try to do some damage. The 2 medium lasers have redundancy. Maybe they should be a little bit more, maybe 3, but where are we going to find the slot? And I do have to manage heat. But 2 is pretty solid. Then we get to once the target is wounded, once we're into internals, once we're into component systems, then we've got the short-range missiles essentially trying to blast and trying to crit seek on there. I wish they were bigger. 4-pack is good. It's better than a 2. I wish it was a 6 to spread it out more for crit seeking, but the 4s are solid. So as it is, the Ostwar, the weapon system, while a little bit lighter, it's got some bite. It's got something that it can do. On the way in, hit you with the 20s, open you up a little bit, switch to the medium lasers, switch to the short-range missiles on there. Drawbacks. Well, it's a lower tech base on there. The main drawback is you've got a lot of ammo in there. And as a heavy mech, you are going to be eating a lot of firepower. It is going to go to internals on there. Now, obviously, by the time it goes to internals, if I'm so wounded anyway, all right, but that does make me very vulnerable to just, with any heavy mech, wherever the ammo is located, taking that damage into that one area for whatever reason. Like you hit me 4 times and you roll 3 times in that one area, and now the rest of my mech is essentially undamaged, but I'm weak, getting ready to bust through to the internals. That could happen. With the Ostwar, that is a problem. That is a challenge. And due to the nature of the short-range missiles and the medium lasers, I'm going to be getting up there. Something like a longbow or an archer or a Jaeger mech, although the archer has a little bit more potency with that, little more survivability. I'm packing tons of ammo. Longbow, I've got lots of ammo in there, but because I'm far away and I'm pelting you from range and I've got other stuff trying to keep you busy, that ammo going to internal and exploding isn't as much of a concern. So that's a concern with the Ostwar. The other problem is having those missiles in the paddle hands. It looks really cool. It's like the Marauder. It looks beast. It looks fantastic. But the arms are traditionally the weakest parts on a mech, and from both facings, they tend to get hit a lot on there. So to lose the arms and quickly lose the missiles in there, that's going to make it harder to crit seek. So I find with the Ostwar, one needs to be a little bit more decisive. Not that we ever want to sit there and slug back and forth. You could with a Battlemaster if you had to. You could with an awesome mech, literally an awesome mech, if you had to. The Ostwar, we don't really want to do that. I don't really want to do that. I want to get in. I want to open you up. I want to crit you. I want to explode you. I want to move on. Paired with another Ost mech or a support mech, heavy mechs generally want to operate with a support mech, a bodyguard mech. A great example would be something like a Hunchback, because you're going to look to get close anyway, so I might as well get close also with that AC-20. Some mechs can work without a bodyguard mech, or if you have a bodyguard mech, you could kind of break it off if you have to. And so if I'm running my Warhammer, I would like a bodyguard mech. I'd like a wingman on there. But if you have to break off to deal with something, okay, I can hold my own with that. The Ostwar really wants a teammate. It really wants to stick with that classic lance and stick together and fight together on there. Especially, it's a force magnifier. Take something like a Griffin that's got some long-range punch. Taking something, well, Shadowhawk's a little different. I'm just trying to think of some classic mechs here. Blackjack, just to soften up that target with the Ostwar on the way in, weaken it, and now it can really, really shine. Did I say it was one of my favorite mechs? It is one of my favorite mechs. Quirks included, oddities included, tech narrative included. I do get a 2% C-bill commission from Kong Industries. So if you add this mech or any of the other Ost class mechs to your collection, I will be sending you that invoice. I need my end of the year bonus to naturally buy more mechs.